And if something's not working, you can't sit around and wait for somebody else to show up and give you the answer. You have to try some of these things on your own. If it's not up to you, you should still do the thing, even if it's not being measured.
I love that. As much as we want to help companies succeed, we want to help employees win and grow in their career. We want to help people get promoted. We want marketing reps to turn into VPs and CMOs. We want account executives to turn into RevOps leaders and VPs of sales. So I love that you make that point. It's like, this may not be your job, but this could be the key to your future, bringing this to your company.
All those people who start succeeding and get better in their career, more confident, make more money or whatever, and they eventually become decision makers, your decision makers, by the way, or they go start their own businesses and become your decision makers. I applaud you for thinking about the impact that you can have on the career arc of all the people that your product serves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Impact is key.
Welcome back to In-Person GTM Pros, the podcast where we interview industry leaders shaping the future of go-to-market. I'm joined by my co-host, Jason Alvarez-Cohen, founder and CEO at Popl. And today's guest is Scott Leese, a well-known voice in the B2B sales community. He's a 6-time sales leader, 5-time founder, 3-time author, and has worked with over 150 companies around the world, playing a key role in 14 exits, including 12 unicorns. As the former SVP of sales at Qualia, Scott led the company from 0 revenue to unicorn status in under 3 years. He's the founder of Milos Ventures, host of Surf and Sales, and the author of 2 Amazon bestsellers, Addicted to the Process and More Than a Number. In this episode, we unpack a few key topics, including the most effective outbound channels in 2025, how to build trust and relationships at scale, why LinkedIn is key to successful in-person strategy, and how even small businesses can effectively leverage in-person channels without burning cash. If you're a seller, marketer, or founder looking to execute a bulletproof go-to-market strategy, this episode will challenge how you think and might just give you your next play. Let's get into it. Scott, welcome to the podcast. We're really excited to have you today.
I appreciate you guys inviting me over.
Yeah, you are one of our early inaugural guests to this show, and we've been looking forward to this for a long time. You come from a professional background in RevOps, sales, system architecture. So we're really excited to get your take from that perspective when it comes to in-person channels, in-person marketing, and all that good stuff. I want to talk about a LinkedIn post that you recently put up that got a lot of love. And Jason actually had a similar one talking about cold calling and some of the traditional channels that GTM has been built on. And so I'm going to read this here. You said, "We're seeing a structural shift. The channels we built GTM on, they're collapsing fast. I didn't need an announcement from Apple to tell me that cold calling is dead. iOS 17 put it on life support, and then iOS 18 pulled the plug. Cold email, buried under AI noise and bloated sequences, SDR output down, conversion worse. The problem isn't execution, it's architecture." Can you break down what you meant there and what the future of GTM channels look like?
Yeah, generally speaking, what I'm saying is that cold calling, cold emailing, and even cold social DMing just simply does not work as good as it used to. And that's an inarguable fact. The only people that seem to argue that are people who haven't been around very long and don't know any better, or people who have been around forever and have an agenda because they run like a cold calling or cold emailing kind of agency. I don't run either of those things. All these things that I'm talking about actually screw me and make my past experience potentially start to teeter on irrelevancy and makes my job harder. So I don't have an agenda. I just kind of calling it like I see it. Human behavior has fundamentally changed. We don't talk on the phone as often as we used to. I just turned 48 years old yesterday, as you guys know.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. When I was a kid, you know, a phone call that you were expecting like held up the rest of the day. You know, you weren't going anywhere. You were waiting for it, right? It was an event. Now it's a nuisance. Before we started this podcast, you guys are like, hey, make sure your phone is on silent, right? Everybody's phone is on silent. Honestly, if I'm walking down the street or I'm in an office and somebody's phone rings and I hear it, I look at them like they're a strange creature. I don't understand who this person is. right? Like, why is your ringer on? What's wrong with you? And, email is the same way. We've destroyed it with our spam cannon technology and lighting everybody up for the sake of scale and efficiency. Everybody's inbox looks the same. You got hundreds, if not thousands of unread messages. They all have the same stupid titles, and everybody's trying to teach the same hooks and all that kind of stuff. So, this is one of the reasons that companies and sellers are struggling so bad right now, is because these things are changing out from under them and they're not adjusting. Right. So that was the kind of impetus for the post and putting it out there. What can people do differently? Well, they have to rely on things that you used to rely on before everybody used email and before everybody had a power dialer calling 7,000 times a day. What you used to have to do is you used to have to work your network big time, create and establish and nurture those relationships, and give until you had an ask to make. And at that point in time, you had enough kind of human capital that somebody would be like, oh, Jason's helped me out a bunch already. Why not? I'll help this guy out. So there's the referral kind of based motion. And then there's the thing that we got away from because it didn't scale or it wasn't cost effective, whatever, which is in-person events and, meeting customers, gasp, face to face, right? And all of that stuff you're going to have to do now more than ever in order to stand out and prove your humanity. Because in a world where everything is automated or AI driven or robotics or whatever you want to call it, how can I prove that my email was written by me? How can I even prove that the phone call is me? How can I prove that video content is me? All of these things are easier and easier every day to deepfake. So the one thing I can't fake is getting on a plane or getting in the car and driving out to y'all's office and showing up and shaking hands face to face and having conversations, right? And, you put together small, intimate kind of in-person events where you're getting some customers together, some prospects together, right? These are the things now that open up opportunities, and people need to go kind of back in time and start actually putting tons of energy and effort into this referral and in-person kind of motion, because the phone and email, they just are not working the way they used to.
Very well said.
Thanks.
Scott, similar to your post, I also made a post about cold calling being dead. A very polarizing header, right? That really splits the sales and marketing world. And there was a couple talk tracks in the comments. One of those talk tracks was that the ones who are still saying cold calling is alive are the ones who they do a cold calling training company, or they do a service, or they that's their main channel. And so they're just no, we're going to figure out a way around it. And there was another talk track where companies heard that we're pushing in person, right? Both your posts, my posts, were pushing the in person. I'm curious your take on this, because one of the responses there was, in person is great if you have large contract silos. But how can a startup or a smaller company benefit from in person, right? Because if in person is very expensive to send people out, very expensive to book hotels, very expensive to have someone who is able to either get a booth or walk around to the booths. I'm curious, how can smaller companies or more startups actually utilize that channel?
Well, the answer is basically do the opposite of all the things that person seemed to imply were necessary. Why do I need to spend money at a booth? Why do I have to spend a bunch of money, I don't know, at a fancy 5-star steakhouse or some shit like that? Here's an idea. Find an open public pickleball court and invite a dozen people over, a dozen teams over. Pretty much anybody is athletic enough to play pickleball, regardless of age and size and experience. Get people outside. It's the summertime. That doesn't cost anything. What does it maybe cost? $30-$40 to rent the court, if that. And if it's public, it might not cost anything. So you got to get way more creative, Yeah. It does not have to cost $1 million. Go to the beach, depending on where you are. Beach is free. Hey, I'm at mile marker or, lifeguard tower 47, right? We're posting up. Buy some beverages, bring some sandwiches, you know, shit, that would cost $100, something like that. So yeah, the problem is that person seems to be thinking of it like, okay, you know, if I was Apple and I was putting on an in-person event, I'd go all out, right? Like we're getting a suite at the Super Bowl and all this. It's like, calm down, dude. Okay. You don't need to do any of that stuff. Organize a run around the lake, right? Go for a little hike on the trail somewhere. These things cost nothing whatsoever, except a little bit of time, right? Yeah. So find people in your area is the first thing. Don't try to put in-person events together in a city or a country or whatever that you don't live. So I live in Austin, Texas. And if the two of you were on my team and we were, you know, Popl representing, right? We're all here in Austin. We're doing our in-person event in Austin. I'm not doing it in Florida or New York or LA or something like that, because then we all have to fly there. We all have to get a hotel, like you said. We do it here. We don't have to spend money on any of that stuff. And there's a nice scene here as far as, you know, tech and business goes. So stay at home, get creative, find cheap things, find activity-based things potentially. Right? These are the ways that you can pull this off without spending any money or a fraction of the money that some of these larger companies are spending it on.
Yeah, makes sense. And in your post, I think some of the core themes were trust, relationship building, and that ties into everything you just described here. Regardless of the scale of your business, whether you're a 0 to 1 startup or a Fortune 500, looking to employ trust and relationship building in your sales motion, your marketing motion, how do you actually implement that based on your experience with different companies of different sizes? Where does that start and what does that look like in a structured way?
Yeah. So I think it looks like patience, number one. I think it looks like consistency over time. And it looks like giving rather than getting at first. This rears its ugly head, maybe most noticeably in like on LinkedIn or like connection requests or DMs that you get, right? I bet if all of us looked at our connection requests right now, there's some joker who's in there that's like, hey, Bryce, I'm Scott from xyz.com. Would love to have 15 minutes of your time to talk about whatever. Or if they didn't put that in the connection request, the moment you hit accept, then they send that over to you, right? So this is not trust-based, right? So instead, what you might do is you might say, hey, Bryce, looking to connect with other sales leaders in the area. Let me know if I can ever be helpful to you. No ask here. That's it. That's all I say, right? And then I just pay attention to your activity on the platform. So if I see Jason posting stuff, I'm going to engage with it. If I engage with it a few times, he's going to see my name, hopefully. He's going to see my face, hopefully. He's going to start to kind of put 2 and 2 together and be like, hey, this guy Scott's kind of showing up consistently on my content here. Right. And let's be honest, we all have a little bit of an ego that we want stroked. And so if somebody's showing up on your content and engaging and that makes you feel good, you're getting a dopamine hit, your content's doing better. Right. Now I start to think to myself, oh, this guy Jason's probably a pretty cool dude, man. Keeps kind of engaging with my stuff. So we go back and forth a couple times. Right. Now I might reach out to him and say, hey, been appreciating your content. Love the dialogue we've had back and forth. I got a question for you. And then I might just ask a question like, what do y'all do for in-person events and sales strategy stuff? Like, do you guys do any of that stuff? That's it. Just a question, just to foster a dialogue. I want to hear what they have to say. If they say, oh yeah, we've got this whole thing kind of deployed. Great. Maybe I can learn from that. If they're like, no, that motion is absolute trash. Like it doesn't work in our business. Well, now I have an opportunity to ask more questions, get curious, and maybe slowly try to rebut that thing, right? Mm-hmm. And in doing so, if you do it the right way, somebody might say, well, what do you do? I see you work at this company, Popl. That seems to be like what you guys do. And then I can say, yeah, I'm happy to help you if you ever want to have a chat about it. No pressure though, right? Just very calm, chill, casual. But now you need to do that, across 50 people a day or 100 people a day or 500 people a week or whatever. So what it means is you have to be intentional about the type of relationships that you cultivate, right? That means time and energy and effort. That means spending time on a platform that maybe you don't want to spend too much time on, right? It means being more patient than you want. It means holding back on the patented CTA, call to action, at the end of your fucking email that everybody includes in there. You don't need that. If people want to end up talking to you, they'll ask about it. How do I get on your calendar, man? I want to learn more about this, right? Just be patient with some of these things. That's a long game, and most salespeople don't want to play the long game. They want a quick return on it. And if we're being honest, most founders don't want that either, because it's the founders who are pressuring the sellers typically for instantaneous results. And so this thing just starts to spiral out of control, right? So consistency, patience, giving, being helpful, time, scaled out, right? These are the things. This is the way to do it in my experience.
What a fascinating strategy. It's like you do the long game as opposed to the scaled reach out approach, right? Because you're spot on there, Scott, where it's like the strategy you just gave, which is a great one. You can't do that at scale, especially with LinkedIn and their lockdown on automation. What can be done at scale is that in-mailing, right? Is the message sending, which is why I think we're seeing so many more of those.
Yeah.
So it's a question of like, okay, being intentional, that's spot on. But is there a way that could be somehow done at scale where you're actually speaking, you're actually engaging with someone's content, but like automated? I don't know, like, because I know companies, unless they have a big ticket value for their product, if you're just selling like $500 a year contracts or 1,000, et cetera, that could be very time consuming, especially for early founders and founder-led sales. So like, I wonder if there's a way to scale that up that's almost like a hybrid.
Well, if there isn't one right now, there will be. There's plenty of things that'll do automated comments on LinkedIn and automated connection requests and all that stuff. The problem is it's pretty easy to sniff out what's a bot or AI versus a human. And when somebody sniffs it out, it really rubs people the wrong way. And I think that part's going to get worse. So the technology is going to have to get good enough to be basically indistinguishable,
Do you think that's coming? Do you think there will be a time soon? Yeah.
Yeah, like orders of magnitude faster than we think. Most people will be like, oh, that's 3 years away or whatever. I'm like, okay, let me check that with you in 3 months and see if you can tell.
Yeah.
But I would actually challenge you. You said that it doesn't scale. Like, I don't agree with that. I think it does scale. I actually think that I'm living proof of this scaling, because I challenge you to find many people with the size of a LinkedIn following that I have, which is like 123,500 or something like that, who responds to every message that they get, every comment that they get, with the speed with which I respond. It's just a matter of focus. So what I'm not doing is putting hours of energy into email prospecting. I'm not putting hours of energy into prospecting over the phone. All those hours I'm putting into messaging my network and trying to be helpful, right? And I've been able to scale, in my version of scaling, at least. So if you can find a way to merge the technology with the manual kind of repetitive tasks that keeps the authenticity, then I think you'll be in good shape.
Like you're focusing, right? You're not trying to do too many channels at once. It's focused on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's focused on relationship building. For me, it's focused on relationship building through any means possible. Okay. And the easiest way for me, at least, is through a network like LinkedIn. And then it's through face-to-face kind of, encounters and events and stuff like that, either ones I host or ones I go to, right? That to me is the most authentic way that I can scale. I'm scaling my network. I'm scaling the strength of my relationships, and 5 or 10 of those kind of relationships are going to be stronger than if I spent the same amount of hours sending emails out. It's just, you just don't have that inherent trust. People are very skeptical when a relationship starts off with a cold email or a cold phone call. It's always been that way, but times were a little bit different then. Times are a lot different now. Game has changed a little bit.
Yeah. Everything's changed. You mentioned this sort of age-old tension between the seller and the founder, or the seller and the executive, and the need for like these quick wins, quick sales, which sort of goes against the idea that trust takes time to build.
Yeah.
And that introduces this idea of IPM as a legitimate strategy for growth. You host your own event every year, Surf and Sales, and definitely want to get into more about the details that that's super fascinating. But as a seller and a founder yourself, where is the disconnect that companies can look to close the gap between there, to say, let's invest the time into in person, into, and it may not even be investing money, right? Because you talked about how to do it cheap. Let's invest time and focus and effort into in-person channels to build these relationships, build this trust that we know is going to pay off down the road and ultimately deliver revenue.
Well, I think some of the disconnect is that the founders don't know how to do this themselves and have never done it themselves at all. I think that it becomes a little bit difficult maybe to track. Like, how do I really measure a salesperson's activity? You know, they're like, hey, I went to this one event today. I was there for 4 hours and, you know, met 2 people and whatnot. And I think the founder sits around and wonders, well, you went to this thing for half a day and you only got 2 meetings out of it. Like, you should have got more. What were you doing when you were there? And they start wondering how you're spending your time. Meanwhile, you know, if I was in the office and I made 50 calls today and I opened 2 opportunities, you'd probably be pumped.
Yeah.
But that's because I was under your watchful eye potentially. Right. So there's sort of a management and kind of trust of your people issue that is problematic with it. I think a lot of sellers, part of the disconnect is a lot of sellers don't know how to do this stuff or don't want to do this stuff. You know, if you look at the sort of mid-level, junior mid-level type salesperson right now, they freaking started in 2020. They're like 27, 28 years old right now. You know,
so true.
And they've been working at home forever. They've been selling Zoom, thinking they're the best salesperson ever. It's like, you know, the whole world needs a fucking virtual communication platform. Congrats, you hit your quota at Zoom. You must be really good.
Just all the 80 right there.
Yeah, and then they just sit around, wait for warm leads to show up. They've barely ever had to prospect, let alone get off their ass and go in person and put something together. So they don't really know how to execute that motion. And if they got a sales leader in place, some old geezer like me who's like, I never had to do this stuff. I don't want to, you know, go to events. I got 2 kids and a family. I can't go to happy hours at 5 to 8 twice a week. You know, it's like everything, there's just excuses everywhere. Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, historically, when you come from the VC world and the VCs have dumped money into your company, you need to show results quickly and you're under the gun all the time. So the founder has to report back metrics and success and, you know, give signs and indications that things are working.
Yeah.
And if not, they cut the cord and they kind of start over, you know. It's not been unheard of in my 20-year plus career for people to get 2 weeks maximum of like onboarding and training, and you've got to start kind of putting up numbers, you know. I mean, if we rewind the tape to like 2004, I had my first ever sales job. Day 5, the first Friday that I was ever working, I was the last person in my hiring class of like 15 people, 20 people, something like that, who either had not quit or already closed the deal. And I was 100% convinced that I was going to get fired if I didn't close the deal in that first week. I mean, it's that type of world that, you know, has ruled us for a really long time.
Interesting.
And, you know, it's difficult to kind of adjust expectations now and say, well, I'm not going to hire 15 people at once and throw everything at the wall and whoever makes it great. I can be more calculated. I got to really like take my time and invest in this person and make sure they're set up for success and have reasonable growth metrics. It's a big change, is my point, from every end. And you're seeing people, I think, struggle with it for various reasons.
Yeah. Jason, I think, I was real quick, Jason. It's like you're kind of the opposite of what Scott's describing, in that, yes, you grew up in your professional career in this sort of virtual world, but you were not sort of metaphorically held at gunpoint by a VC who's saying you need to deliver this in this amount of time. And you and Dieter, our VP of sales, have built this sales motion where we've found reps who can go build these relationships, but we also have built ways to measure them. And sort of breaking that mold that Scott is talking about has been the status quo for forever, I think.
Yeah. Two topics that I love that you brought up here, Scott. That first one, where as a company on the VC track, you do have a lot of pressure to 10x, 100x every year. Yeah. And that's where I think a lot of the scaling up sales teams like crazy, and then also trying to automate just complete scale seems so appealing, right? It's like, oh, why go to an event when we can we'll get a couple demos on the books. Whereas like I could cold call dial, use this service and make 100 cold calls in a day and probably get the same output. But at least to me, it feels like we are doing everything we can in terms of scale. And we've been fortunate to take the seed strapping route, right? Where you raise a seed round and then you don't necessarily raise a Series A because you become profitable quite early.
Yeah.
And because we've done that, we've been able to experiment and see like, okay, what channels really work for us before having to like just throw a bunch of scale and hire a bunch of headcount. And Series A is really like the next step there where things start to get a lot more serious with VCs. Seed, it's like, hey, we believe in you, your idea, here you go. Series A is like, okay, this needs to be scale. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem. And then it continues, Series B, et cetera. So yeah, being able to have the luxury of trying things out and seeing what works for us has been awesome. And I hope more companies end up doing this as well, like seeing what works for them before just going back to raise more money.
It feels like that's the trend right now for sure, which I think is a good thing. You know, I think it's a good thing. They're getting some sort of basic business principles are back in style and in vogue now. And it's forcing people to be more efficient and effective and calculated and not just throw spaghetti at the wall and hope something sticks. Right.
Scott, in your companies that you either joined or founded, have you mostly taken the VC route or have you been more on the profitability route?
Great question. Probably overall more on the VC route as far as my clientele. But in the last couple of years, that's changed quite a bit. A lot more seed strapping companies. But yeah, still overall, mostly VC-backed companies. Yeah. And that's the world that I came from. I had a lot of good relationships with VC firms that have recommended me to others and whatnot. So yeah, that's still the most common. Yeah, but changing a little bit.
Are you seeing even the VC funded companies? There's like this trend of like doing more with a smaller headcount. All these AI companies, it's like such a thing.
Everything.
It's like, oh, how do we get to billions with so little people possible?
That's exactly right. I mean, I can't remember the guy's name, but there's some guy who's a media darling right now who just built some company, spun it up in 6 weeks, generated X amount of revenue and sold it for $80 million. One guy. That's it.
Base 44. Yeah.
There you go. That is every VC's dream right now, I think, whether they're speaking it out loud or not, you know. That's the rise of AI. That's the rise of automations. It's also the rise of basic business principles, like let's go a little slower and not just hire 15 people overnight. Let's make sure that whatever we're doing is working. So it's not all bad and macabre. Yeah, that is the way startups are thinking, though. You know, and I don't think you have a choice right now. You have to lean in and embrace that kind of thinking, especially with low-level tasks. right? But we're a ways off from, a robot version of me flying around, going to prospect meetings and dinners and stuff like that. So the in-person thing is pretty safe by comparison for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. And even if a robot version could fly around, it's like, do I want to buy from that robot? Apologies to cut you off, but I want to talk to you, Scott. I want to hang out with you.
Yeah. I think long term, that might change, but like we're a ways off from that. So right now, I think you have to look for defensible revenue motions. And if you're a salesperson, defensible skill sets that keep you employed and keep you valuable. If all you're doing is sending emails, you're replaceable. And I think if all you're doing is picking up a power dialer and delivering a pitch, I think you're replaceable. And, doesn't sound nice to hear, but that's where we're headed. We're not fully there yet because the technology is not quite good enough, but people are trying every single day. People are trying, but they can't replicate my network. Can't replicate who I know, how I've treated all those people, the trust that I've built. They can't replicate my ability to host or attend in-person events and put these things on. So if I'm really good at those things, I've extended my, runway or an employment at a particular place a significant amount, I think, and that's what I'm looking for right now. Is how do I keep myself relevant and employable for as long as possible? Right? And I think that, from a sales rep to a founder, we all should be trying to think about that right now and leaning in, therefore, into those strategies that are working, but are also keeping the human aspect like at the forefront.
I think what we've been able to build with Popl is sort of breaking the traditional thinking of what the effort of in-person channels can deliver. Because I think some of the things you pointed out here that people look at in-person as trust building, long-term, this may or may not be worth something in the future, but the real issue is measurement, right? You talked about if the boss can't see the salesperson dialing the phone or measure how many calls they made, regardless of the answer was yes or no, there's a lack of trust there. Do you think that more companies would be open to listening to the value of an IPM go-to-market strategy if they knew how much they could measure that they weren't measuring today?
Yes, I do. I think that they don't know what to measure. They don't know why it matters. They don't know how to track it sometimes in a reliable way at all. And they don't understand the ROI. I think they think real simplistically. It's like, okay, we put on this event. The event costs us $1,000. So we got one customer for $500. We lost money on this deal. Well, not necessarily. You didn't. How long is that customer going to stick around? What is the LTV of a customer acquired via cold email or cold calling versus the LTV of a customer acquired in person? What is the number of support tickets requested by an in-person event closed one versus a cold call account closed one, right? Because if it's half as much, that's money. That's time and money you're spending on the support side, right? So, okay, you want to measure it by the very first purchase. I mean, you got a business problem if your product is not sticky enough to get somebody to renew once or twice. So I think sellers and sales leaders who want to invest in this motion need to do a better job being really, really thorough and coming up with all these different metrics and mechanisms of measurement to paint the right story to get the founder to be like, that makes sense. Maybe this does work for us, right? And I don't know that many people that are measuring some of these things that I talked about.
Yeah.
It's historically been such a hard problem to solve. How do you measure in person, like offline, in an online way? Always been tough.
Yeah.
CRMs don't really make it into the in-person world. Same with conferences. They just they give you some tools, but they don't really make it into the detailed attribution of what you're doing there. That's, I feel like a lot of the value that we see when we talk to prospects and close customers is they say this is going to be great because we're just getting visibility into a channel that we've never gotten. Like we know that this channel works well for us, but we just don't really have any data.
Yeah.
We have no data on it. And a lot of times the end user, whether it's sales or marketing, they need that data to justify to a VP of marketing or to a VP of sales, someone who's higher up. And so curious, Scott, if you agree with that sometimes that data is what helps the companies understand how a channel is working.
It does, especially if you have a founder that is super, super data driven in their personality, right? Like you don't get a yes unless you present a master's PhD level defense of your hypothesis, right? So you can complain about that, or you can get really freaking good at creating PhD level presentations, right? I mean, what's the average sales cycle of a deal that we close via cold calling versus the average sales cycle length of a deal that we close in person? You have to just sit there and think of all of these different metrics, some of them which you maybe have never tracked before, that will end up telling a compelling story in support of this motion that gets a founder or a VC to be like, I understand that. That makes sense. I can see it. The logic makes sense. The math makes sense. And then compare it to the alternatives and show that it's superior. Don't just show that it works. Show it in comparison to these other things that have historically been featured. And if they're superior, this new in-person thing is superior to the cold email thing. What are we doing leaning so hard into cold email still? We should lean more into this, right? None of these things are hard. It's just, again, it's about focus and time and energy and commitment to it, right? The reason it's historically been difficult to track this stuff is because nobody's put in the freaking time required to track this stuff appropriately. It's not that it's impossible. It's just like, I don't have time to do this because I'm tracking all this other stuff. Okay. Let's prioritize this. Let's figure out a couple things you can put down in order to pick this up and track it. So sales leaders got to get better at it. Sales reps have to get better at it. It's just creating the narrative to tell the right story. That's it.
That's a great metric. Time to close. From first interaction, from first meeting to close. How does that compare with all the channels?
And what you should see is that in-person leads and referral leads close faster than relationships kicked off through cold outreach. You should have a faster sales cycle. That matters. You should have a larger contract value. That's what I see across my clientele. Okay, that matters. You should have stickier customers. That definitely matters because now our LTV is going up. You should have less support tickets. That matters because that's less a pain in our neck, better for morale, and less money we're spending on support people messing around with this stuff, right? Well, what other metrics can we come up with that might matter, right?
Makes total sense. What would you call those metrics? Is that RevOps, Scott? Is that sales ops? Like what is that like term for measuring those?
Well, I think it's just the term to me is just measuring the right KPIs. A department or a person who's kind of owning it or doing it. If you're fortunate enough to have a RevOps function, they should own that. They might not know to own that without being told and instructed as to why. That's the sales leader's job or the founder's job if there's no sales leader. But if I have a RevOps person, I'm 100% going to them saying, hey, we are struggling to build pipeline. This cold emailing, cold calling shit is not working the way it used to. I think that our in-person stuff, we should lean in harder to. These are the things I want to start tracking. Or look at historicals for me and tell me, how do our numbers look in historicals against these other things? Bang. That's a RevOps function, right? And now I've got data to back it up. But it's just KPIs. It's just metrics, right? It's a little bit of dashboard management, but it's slightly outside of the normal dashboard management that people have done for so long.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. That's the difference. We just
brainstormed
brainstormed 4 or 5 of them. If we sat here for 30 more minutes and we could probably come up with another half dozen or a dozen. So there's no shortage of them.
Yeah.
Right? Network growth, for example, is a KPI that I've had all of my clients track for the last year and a half, 2 years or so. Right? How big is your network growing month over month? Why does that matter? Well, it's visibility. It's ad spend, potentially. It's PR. It's the ability to run an affiliate referral motion a little stronger. If you have 1,000 people in your network, Jason, and I have 100,000 people in my network, Which one of us is more likely to be able to get introductions and build pipeline through referrals? Me. My network is 100 times the size of yours, right? So I want my salespeople and my founder, frankly, I want them to grow their network. That's a metric that I want to track. This is important to me as how many calls did you make today is how many people did you add to your network today?
Network growth.
If it's network growth, KPI as network growth, right? That matters.
I see posts every once in a while where people say, if your CEO isn't posting on LinkedIn, you guys are making a mistake.
Yes,
like just calling that out. Yeah.
I agree with that. But I would also say if the sales leader is not doing that, mistake. If the sales rep is not doing that, mistake. It's a mistake for everybody. And even if you don't want to create your own content, you still can send connection requests out every single day. There is no reason not to do that. I think the cap is something like 15 to 20 a week, or 15 to 20 a day, right? If I'm a salesperson, I am sending 15 of those out every single day without fail. If I'm a sales leader, I'm making sure my reps are sending 15 out every single day, or I'm coming down on them. The same way 25 years ago, people would be like, did you make your 100 calls a day today? No, don't pick up the phone. It's like, Bryce, did you ask 15 people to join your network today? No. Okay, dude, what are you doing? Come on. Get on there, right? Well, I don't know who to ask. Oh, I do. Anybody who might be a buyer of your product, anybody who might be a referral partner of your product, anybody who might be a, partner, anybody you might hire one day, anybody who might hire you one day, anybody in a VC world, anybody in a consulting coaching world who might be a good fit organizationally for what you all do. There's no end to who you could invite, right?
Yeah.
Very smart.
So it's a silly excuse. And if you did that, every day for a year, it would take you if you started from zero, it would take you about 5 years to maximize the number of connections you had on LinkedIn if you put no content out whatsoever. So if you're putting content out and you're engaging on other people's content and you're sending connection requests, now you're probably getting inbound connection requests and follows as well. It should take you 2 to 3 years probably. You could go from 0 connections to 30,000 and be maxed out on LinkedIn. Why are you not doing that? That is a silly, silly thing in 2025 and beyond, when the strength and size of your network matters more than ever in order to build pipeline and close deals. So network growth is the KPI. Now we've got 5. We just came up with 5 new metrics for people.
Yeah.
Is the best way to measure network growth, Scott, is like LinkedIn followers? Like is there another way to like measure that, or is that really
I'm sure there's other ways. I'm sure there's some fancy platform I could pay $19.99 for, but I don't need that. Let me just create. If I was you guys' boss, I would just have this stupid little Excel spreadsheet and I'd be like, Jason, Bryce, Scott, and I'd gamify it between the 3 of us. Okay. Which one of us added more LinkedIn connections this month? Which one of us added more Instagram connections or Twitter or TikTok or YouTube or whatever channels we're focused on and are most relevant for our business, right?
Yeah.
Just that. Then if I got us into a rhythm where we're all kind of doing this on our own now and maybe we're still talking trash to each other, trying to beat each other, but it's like, even if we stopped communicating about it, you're still doing it because you're kind of hooked. Now I'd be like, okay, well, let's add in impression count, or let's add in engagements, comments. Let's add in likes, right? Let's add in quantified ad spend. I can go look at my quantified ad spend and see I got 65 million impressions last year on LinkedIn. And they give me a report that says that's worth, $400,000 or whatever it's worth. So just gamify these things. Have a contest around it in your company, right?
It's a great idea. Scott, also real quick, I feel like you'd appreciate this. We have an automation where anytime a person is moved to an opportunity, so like pretty early in the sales cycle, as soon as they're moved to an opportunity that's open, it sends us all a Slack message to connect with that person. So it takes their email, it enriches it, takes the LinkedIn profile and Slacks it to everyone, and then everyone just connects with that person.
I like that. Yeah. Smother them with love.
Exactly. Makes them feel a connection. It's like, how can I not go with this company?
Yeah.
Scott, it sounds like when you're going to adopt any new motion, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's in person, what I'm hearing is you got to measure as much as you can, knowing that not every metric is going to be your golden metric, but you'll figure out what that is and be able to draw correlations between the ones that start to stand out and your end goal, revenue, customer acquisition, whatever it may be. Does that sound accurate? Is like, first, you just got to measure everything you can when you adopt a new channel or a new strategy?
Well, I want to say yes, but I want to throw an asterisk in there.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is if you're not measuring it right now, or you don't know how to measure it right now, that lack of measurement is not an excuse to not do the thing. So if anybody's listening to this and they're a salesperson and they're like, well, my company is not measuring my network growth yet or doesn't know how, so I'm not going to do that, then you're an idiot and you're sitting around for no reason, right? And if you're not currently measuring speed to close on a in-person event lead versus a cold outbound lead, then you're an idiot and you're waiting around to kind of be told what to do. So yes, you should. But if you're in an organization that's not doing that, you should take initiative and do that stuff anyways and create your own damn mechanism for tracking it for yourself. Yeah. And too often there's kind of reactive / lazy employees who don't do this kind of stuff that is beneficial for their career, whether they're at that company forever or not, because they're sitting around waiting to be told what to do. And they only do what they're told what to do, right? And maybe they see it as extra effort and I'm not getting paid for this extra effort or whatever. It's like, come on, man. We shouldn't have to explain this, but like as a salesperson, in some ways you're running your own business and you have the ability to earn, in theory, an uncapped income, right? And if something's not working, you can't sit around and wait for somebody else to show up and give you the answer. You have to try some of these things on your own. So yes, you should be measuring it right from the start. You should lean into what's working, lean out of what's not. But if it's not up to you, you should still do the thing.
Yeah.
Even if it's not being measured, if that makes sense. Find a way to just measure it on your own notepad for all I care.
Yeah. I love that. I recently had an interview with one of our customers who put her name on the line to pitch Popl to a VP of a different department because she said, we're going to be able to measure the value and the outcome of in-person initiatives with a tool like this. And she told me the whole process of about how she pitched it and sold it. And we want, like, as much as we want to help companies succeed, we want to help employees win and grow in their career. We want to help people get promoted. We want marketing reps to turn into VPs and CMOs. We want account executives to turn into RevOps leaders and VPs of sales. So I love that you make that point. It's like, this may not be your job, but this could be the key to your future, bringing this to your company.
Yeah. This is, people need to zoom out a little bit, and look at it as career optimization.
Yeah.
Not just in this role, I do this thing because I'm being told what to do or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And you guys are trying to optimize for impact, which, I try to optimize for impact as well.
Mm-hmm.
I can get paid by clients who don't get any kind of return. That doesn't give me any joy whatsoever. And it certainly doesn't bring me additional business if the clients I'm working with are not having success, right? No, I want to have an impact. And I know if I have that impact, then the success will come. So with your product and company, if you get people tracking these things and implementing this sales motion and that motion starts working, all those people who start succeeding and get better in their career, more confident, make more money or whatever, those people eventually get promoted, by the way, and they eventually become decision makers.
You don't say.
Your decision makers, by the way. Or they go start their own businesses and become your decision makers. Right? This is another reason why I tell people, zoom out a little bit, have more patience, take more of these like brain picking free kinds of calls by junior level people, Because if you spend time helping that person and make an impact on their life, 5 years from now, they're a fucking decision maker and they might close a 6-figure deal, 7-figure deal with you. You don't know. You're shutting down that relationship, but you don't know who you might be able to help or who might be able to help you. Not just now, not just next week or next year, but way down the line even. So I applaud you for thinking about the impact that you can have on the career arc of all the people that your product serves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Impact is key.
Yeah.
So I did want to bring up one more topic. And Scott, we're super fired up. And the reason we're fired up is because we're creating a new market. We're creating a new path. And we're calling that path in-person marketing, right? We're calling this brand new go-to-market motion.
Yeah.
It's a brand new framework. And we're actually surprised that no one's ever created the term in-person marketing. So I wanted to just kind of make sure and ask you some point during this chat, what do you think about that term? Why hasn't anyone created that term? Why are we're seemingly the first? And do you like it? Do you think it really aligns with what we're trying to do? Do you think it's a little bit off? Just curious your thoughts on the term in-person.
Well, I feel like in-person marketing as a phrase has been used many times before. I don't feel like IPM as an acronym has been used in the manner with which you guys are talking about it. And to me, it simplifies things in a way that is super helpful. So we can get away from having to say, I hosted an event, I went to a dinner, I did this, all these things, I went to conferences, da, da, da. Instead, you can just be like, well, what's your IPM strategy? So it's very helpful from the lens of how do we simplify all this stuff and bundle it into this little term acronym framework that everybody understands. If there was a concern or critique with it, it's people hear marketing and they don't think it's relevant for sales. Or they don't think it's relevant for revenue or go to market, right? And they think, oh, the marketing team owns that. In-person marketing, that's the marketing team putting these things on. And my concern is back to what I was just saying before about if your company's not doing it, do it your damn self. If your company's not putting on in-person marketing events or in-person marketing strategies, if their company's not doing IPM, I don't want salespeople to sit here and be like, well, what am I supposed to do? We should be doing IPM, but they don't do it. I want the salesperson or the sales leader to be like, I'm building my own damn IPM strategy. Why has it not been used? I don't know, man. I mean, year and a half ago, I started talking about go to network as opposed to go to marketing or go to market. And as a way to utilize your network to open opportunities. And I had the same thought. How can nobody's like, there's no way that I'm inventing this. I'm not inventing the motion at all. Referrals have always existed. In-person stuff has always existed. But bringing an acronym to the industry that bundles all these things together in a simplified way, I think is very, very helpful. Very helpful.
There's this concept, I believe it's apophatic, and it's the idea that we can see and practice things that we don't have a word for. And there was a study by this guy. He took these colored strings and brought them to this community of people that didn't have a word for every color of the rainbow. And he showed them the string and then showed them something in real life that was that color and asked them if they could match it, and they could. And the point is that just because we don't have a word for something doesn't mean it doesn't exist in our lives. And I think that applies to go to network or IPM. It's like we've all been doing this, but we didn't have a common language to unite around. So that's what we're trying to do with IPM.
Yeah. I like that. That's a very good analogy and story.
So I know we're at time. Scott, where can the network follow you, the projects you're working on?
Yeah, the easiest, most public facing place is just my LinkedIn profile, of course. I respond to everybody who sends me a real message. You can check out some of the stuff that I'm working on at scottleaseconsulting.com. I've got my surf and sales events on there. I've got my podcasts on there, books on there, all this kind of good stuff. So hit me up on LinkedIn.
It's super unique, Scott, that someone like yourself at your scale still responds to all messages. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, again, it's about the intentionality behind my efforts and energy, and I wouldn't do it if it didn't work. Just a reminder.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Scott. We had a great time and we look forward to chatting again soon.
All right, guys. Cheers.